So UFC 324 is officially in the books, and we have officially finished and concluded our very first event on Paramount Plus. Overall, this event was honestly a major success. It was pretty exciting for the most part. It really was a night of finishes, as I expected. They raised a lot of the bonuses with that fresh money that they got coming in. So overall, despite a couple moments here and there, it really was a blast. It was a really fun time. I'm about to just get into the events. I'm going to just give my event recap and break down just the fights along the way. We're going to start off with the early prelim opener of Adam Fugit versus Ty Miller. Now, I knew for this one that Fugit was the underdog. Still, despite all of that, I leaned towards him. And even though this was a match that ended up concluded within the first round, I do think there was a moment that Fugit could have taken advantage of that he just let slip from him. Overall, the real theme of this battle was Ty Miller's boxing. Very crisp. Obviously, the advantage in that aspect. He obviously was the younger and faster fighter, as well as just being more kind of forward pushing. Like, he had a lot more pressure, and he was a lot more efficient with his forward momentum. Despite all of that, Fugit managed to weather the storm for a while, and his moment that I'd mentioned earlier was when he landed that spinning elbow that dazed Ty Miller. The thing is, Fugit was way too slow to hop on the opportunity. When you look, if you rewatch that round, fight's only a round, you'll see that when Fugit landed that, Miller was fully dazed, and even after Fugit was slow to even respond to him, there was still an opportunity. Like, Miller was dazed for a bit, and Fugit basically allowed him to fight his way back into that. Could have been the moment to upset, but overall, Ty Miller definitely debuted in a great fashion and showed why he was the favorite. Overwhelming, just striking, and a great finish for him to start off this card for this first card of the year and on Paramount. Moving on, we had Josh Hokett versus Denzel Freeman. Now, this fight more or less went exactly as how I expected. We saw, as I had said in my prediction, Josh Hokett is literally just on a completely different level of momentum versus Denzel Freeman. Denzel Freeman takes way too much time to get into his fights, whereas Josh Hokett just went straight at him. And you saw it. Hokett, as I said before, Hokett had the much more effective striking. Whereas Freeman was trying to posture and get the right moment, Hokett was just going at him and just was bashing him. Then when you saw the wrestling, as I'd mentioned, Josh Hokett has a better wrestling pedigree. While I know that Denzel Freeman has that freestyle wrestling, but when it comes to MMA, traditional wrestling is a lot more effective. Freestyle is more so too much upper body. Freestyle is more effective when paired with something like judo. But by itself, it's not really anything to really be that gung-ho about when it comes to an MMA format. And you saw this. Josh Hokett took down Denzel Freeman quite easily. He got out of the clinches and took advantage of whenever he wanted. He kind of just pushed him around the whole fight. It was like a freight train that Denzel Freeman just couldn't stop and or slow down. Said it in the beginning. He just wasn't nowhere near the type of competitor for Josh Hokett. And we saw it when Hokett was kind of running through him and made it look silly. I thought they were just giving Freeman to Hokett as a way to help build his reputation. And that's what it looked like. We saw the call out at the end, or Salsa Boy at the end of his fight. Now, while most of us would say that he's not deserving of a top 5 competitor in the division, as somebody who's only has his second fight in the UFC. However, Salsa Boy is also trying to stay really active. So I wouldn't be surprised if he took it just because he called him out. I also wouldn't be surprised if somebody in the UFC tried to make that work, because once again, Josh Hokid is kind of trying to quote unquote steal some of the sauce from Chael Sonnen with his post fight interviews and his whole image. He kind of looks like a mix between Sean Strickland and Chael Sonnen, to be honest. However, easy work for Josh Hokid, as expected. Moving on, we have Alex Perez versus Charles Johnson. Now, this is a fight I'm very proud of. Like, overall for the night, started off the Paramount Era pretty fire, because my predictions were kind of hitting. I think we only got 4 wrong for the whole night. But looking at this one with Alex Perez versus Charles Johnson, as I said before, despite on paper I can build a better argument for why Charles Johnson should beat Alex Perez, I was just leaning towards and feeling Perez for this entire matchup. And I believe that even when you watch that initial part of that fight, Charles Johnson came out like a freight train. He came out with a mission. He was using his advantages. He was landing very clean shots. Like, don't let the significant strikes fool you of the 55 versus the 8. Charles Johnson came out with a good pace and had a good momentum and posturing. But Alex Perez found him, and he found him swiftly. And Alex Perez did not shy away, which is, as I said, sometimes he has a bit of a slow start. I like that he came with the fire. He was here to play once again. We in the first card of the year, the first card on the new Paramount deal. We have higher bonuses, and you saw that Alex Perez fought like it. Same thing with Charles Johnson, and he managed to catch him. And I think that was a fantastic stoppage. I know a lot of people disagree with that. A lot of people think that Charles Johnson was still in it, but no. When you rewatch the stoppage sequence specifically, mind you, Charles Johnson already took a couple bombs prior to that moment, but when that one hit, he shut down, and Alex Perez was still on him. The only reason there wasn't more follow-up shots is because the ref literally pushed him off. And after that, when Perez is already off him, Charles Johnson was so dazed that not only was he still in the mentality of being in the fight, he couldn't even stand properly while he was mounting his own offensive against an opponent who wasn't fighting back. It literally, he tried to stand up and he fell and had to try to get up again with nobody touching him, looking like he was trying to practice a single leg or double leg shot. He literally got up, slipped, stumbled, and then kept going with nobody touching him. Now, if Perez wasn't pushed off, it would have been much worse. That was a very clean stoppage. Great performance by Alex Perez and great effort by Charles Johnson. No, he was pretty upset at the end. They're fighters. It tends to happen. But this one was a very good stoppage. Moving on. We got the next fight that I got wrong. We had Nikita Krylov versus Modestas Bukauskas. Now, my issue with this one is nothing with Krylov. I think Krylov fought a beautiful fight. I think Krylov looked excellent. His footwork was on point. His striking and distance management was excellent. He came out with a game plan and he fought like a fighter who has his back against his wall, because he was. And that is very great to see Krylov with a lot of heart and managing to really break that losing streak. But on the part of Bukauskas, I feel as if he was not prepared for this fight. And I mean exactly what I said. I feel like he was not prepared for the fight. He thought that it would have, I believe he came in thinking it would have been an easy win. He came in, thought that he would have hit him with a few bombs, and as even I myself has mentioned, Krylov's chin has been looking a little bit more suspect recently. And I believe that Bukauskas believed he was going to come in, You were going to hit him with a few bombs, he would fold, and it would be an easy day at the park. However, the Karlov that showed up was not one that Bukauskas was actually prepared for. And when he went in and he ended up dealing with a lot more adversity than he initially anticipated, I think he just shied away and he buckled. And it was honestly embarrassing to see. Bukauskas was not pushing the pace, was not pushing the offensive in the way that he has and could and should have, even when he had moments that arrived because Krylov had put that kind of intimidation in him and forced him to be more considerate of the overall offensive that was coming back. Bukauskas was now significantly more wary of going against him. And that's not what you want to see. It was honestly pretty sad because you saw somebody who, okay, then we have you as a prospect, and you see that you're buckling away just because of a fighter fighting back. Because Bukauskas had all the capability of winning that fight skill-wise. What do you do now when you are outskilled and outwilled by an opponent? Makes you really think about where his ceiling really is. Overall, though, fantastic work by Nikita Krylov. Love to see it. Glad to have you back in the win column, sir. Moving on. We had Ateba Gutierrez versus Andrei Puliev. Speaking of fighters who were a bit trigger shy, Ateba Gutierrez, I believe it's a fair assumption to say that most of us expected him to win. And I think it's an even more fair assumption to say that of those of us who expected him to win, most of us expected him to win within the first 2 rounds by finish. However, that's not what we got. The issue isn't that isn't what we got. The issue is, once again, why was that not what we got? We ended up getting a decision by Ateba Gutierrez. However, we saw Andrei Puliev give him a lot of problems because he wasn't just fighting in the pocket. And this is what I say all the time. If I am at a disadvantage in a certain area, why in the world am I going to try to combat you in that same area? And that is what we saw. We saw that Andrei Puliev was not allowing himself to be stuck in the pocket. He saw him constantly moving, constantly getting on the outside, getting that distance management under control, landing pot shots, and not allowing Gutierrez to just press him against the cage or pressing his offensive. And despite doing all of that and fighting a beautiful strategy, we still saw Gutierrez call him a couple times. But the difference is when Gutierrez caught him and you saw the huge reactions, Gutierrez was so overly patient. It's one thing to be patient, it's another thing to be inactive, and it's an even bigger thing to be lazy. And I feel as if there were a lot of moments where Gutierrez were combinations of inactive and lazy. He was not pushing, and I'm talking, he was not pushing the pace in the way how he should have been. I'd even argue that Andrei Puliev was the one who had a better control of the overall pace of the fight than Gutierrez, because you saw when Gutierrez would go, he would catch him and Andrei would fall, and Gutierrez would almost wait until he gets back up before he started resuming the onslaught, whereas Puliev was not allowing that. If Gutierrez got too close, break it up, use the leg kicks, use his height, use his reach, get out of it, circle back, bring it back in the open where he can move better. You saw a lot of these intentional, strategic moves and decisions on the part of Puliev that you weren't really seeing on Gutierrez. For me, and I said this throughout the entire fight, it felt as if Ateba Gutierrez fought like a fighter who isn't used to not knocking people out. And that is exactly how he executed his strategy. He fought like a fighter who thought that just eventually one of them he's going to put him out. He didn't fight like somebody who was trying to win the fight. It was almost as if he just expected it. Similar to my critique with Bukauskas, the difference is Gutierrez didn't feel as much as a fighter who was like, ah, shit, he's actually fighting me back. What do I do now? For Gutierrez, it felt more like he was confused how he was still getting back up. Like he would hit him, and then he would was expect it to be over. And then he would just wait, and then he'd wait, and then you would see Puliev get back up, and then he'd be like, oh, I guess I continue now. And that's what it felt like repetitively. It felt as if there were constant moments of, okay, boom, this should put him out. Oh, it didn't put him out. What do I do now? Oh, I guess we keep fighting. That really felt like the theme of that fight. So definitely a lot to work on. Like differences, I know we compare him to Francis Ngannou, but the difference with Ngannou, even before he was more refined as a fighter, he still was very, very, very much a forward-moving fighter. Even in the times when it wasn't as effective, he still charged forward repetitively and repeatedly. Whereas with Gutierrez, I feel as if in this showing, he hesitated and waited constantly. But that's something for him to work on alongside his team. And hopefully come out next time with a lot more intentionality. Moving on. We had the feature prelim of Umar Nurmagomedov versus Deiveson Figueiredo. This fight more or less went how I expected in certain aspects. And the reason I say in certain aspects is because I expected Umar to get the finish initially before the fight went on. As the commentary, as terrible as it can be at times, but as the commentary itself pointed out repetitively, Umar Nurmagomedov is one of the people currently in consideration for the next title shot opportunity. The only person definitively above Umar at this point of time is Merab Dvalishvili. But assuming and depending on how much time Merab wants to take to get ready for that rematch, somebody else could potentially sneak in there in the in-between time. And Umar is one of the top considerations for that. However, there are other options. And because there are other options, Umar needed to have the type of dominant performance that Corey Sandhagen himself had in order to earn his title shot opportunity. And that wasn't what we saw. As I said before, Deiveson Figueiredo, legend in the game himself, while at bantamweight, he's been having a bit of trouble with that top 5 section. Since he's gotten past Cheeto, you've really seen kind of a bit of a difference in class between him and the upper echelon of that division. But this was an opportunity for him to kind of upset a top prospect with Umar, but the real star of the show was Umar. This was the opportunity for Umar to have a shutout type performance, which he did, but not in the type of fashion. This is where you have to mix the excitement with the skill. And Umar came up short with that. Umar was overly measured, even in cases where Figueiredo, who was very clearly wary of Umar in several aspects, Umar didn't push the pace as he should have. And I know that with that Team Habib and a lot of the fighters from that region in general, they tend to be a lot more measured and cautious in all of these moments. But there were times where Umar was too measured and too cautious, and he didn't take enough risk in order to really get those big moments. Like, he very clearly beat Figueiredo. Nobody doubts that the outcome of this decision. Everybody knew that Umar won, including Figgy himself. I think Figgy started clapping before they even announced the results. Like, it was very obvious who won the fight, but it felt like he came in there, okay, easy work, pitter patter, couple kicks here and there. I used a grappling to slow him down in the moments where I needed, but that's it. We knew Umar would most likely dominate the grappling because despite Figgy coming from that grappling background and submission, that's a very high focus with Team Habib. So we saw Umar get the better in those grappling exchanges. We saw Umar manage the distance well in kicks. We saw Umar look like the bigger fighter. We saw Umar really hold and had that strength advantage with Figgy, and Umar didn't really get hit too often. Even when you look at this huge disparity in strikes, you have 103 total strikes on the part of Umar versus the 28 strikes of Davis and Figueiredo. It was a ginormous disparity between the two throughout the entire fight. And when you have disparities like that, those are the moments you should close the show early at this stage in the game. It's one thing when you're just building yourself up to an opportunity, but when you are one of the definitive top considerations for the next title shot opportunity, and you know you have competition against other guys that are known to not only be more exciting, but are also have a bit of preferential treatment in how their careers are being pushed, like a Sean O'Malley. These are the moments when you really try to pledge that case, especially when once again we have Marab in the wings. Make an argument that makes somebody say, you know what, I want to see Umar and Peter Yan go at it before I see a rematch against Marab. Let's see Yan versus Umar, and then we can have the winner fight Marab. Let's see stuff like that, because players like O'Malley have a history with Peter Yan. And not to mention, you're working against stuff. People want to see the rematch of the wrong being right written, since a lot of people assumed that O'Malley robbed Yan in that first fight. People want to see, a more exciting striking battle. People want to see something like the rematch between Yan and Marab, see if Marab can actually be the one to bounce back. Now, there's a lot of things working against you, and you need to take these opportunities and make a big splash so that people demand your opportunities. Overall, though, great dominating performance from Umar. Just a little bit disappointed in the sense of urgency and the willingness to really close out when given the opportunity for this one. Moving on, we have the main event now. First main card of the Paramount era. Starting that off with Arnold Allen versus Gene Silva. Now, this great opening for the main event. Once again, it was a very high paced and it was a very high skilled area. I'm going to say I'm impressed because not only are these both two good fighters and two very well-rounded fighters, but I was impressed by Arnold Allen's durability. As I said in my prediction, Diego Lopez had iron chin, diamond, but that's not something Arnold Allen is known for. His durability isn't something he's known for. And he took some shots throughout this fight. He landed some shots as well. This wasn't in no way, shape, or form a one-sided battle. Me watching this, though, I'll say this definitively. You saw some of the hesitancy in Gene Silva early. In that first round, and I'd even argue some of the second as well, you saw that Gene Silva was a lot more cautious than he has been historically. He said it himself that he had a lot of respect for Arnold Allen post-fight and that he watched them very closely for this. But I think it's beyond that. I genuinely believe that Gene Silva still has a little bit of trauma, or at the very least still had a little bit of that shock trauma from how that fight finished against Diego Lopez. And he probably was a little gun shy because of the risk of getting caught up. And even with his emotions, you saw that he was a lot more measured than he usually is. He's usually a lot more fluid, a lot earlier. He usually is a lot more reckless in certain aspects. and kind of instinctually figures out the pacing and timing as it goes along. He's usually a lot more aggressive as well. This matchup, he's a lot more measured. He took his time with the pace a lot more, which allowed Arnold Allen to shine very big in a lot of moments, being the technical fighter he is and the very cerebral fighter he is. Landed a lot of good shots. I think Arnold Allen did more physical damage overall, even though I completely believe that the right person won this fight. But I think Arnold Allen was able to cause a lot more physical damage by just in those moments that he did land. He just landed the more effective shots. You see a slight disparity between the two right here, the 60 versus 78. Well, a little bit more than slight. But you see the disparity in the strikes. You saw that Gene Silva was the one who got credited for 4 takedowns. I don't know if I would necessarily count all 4 of those as takedowns, but and you saw that Gene Silva had the significant strike advantage over Arnold Allen. Despite all of that, when you look at their faces post-fight, you'd think it was the other way around. Despite that, you saw a lot more control measure from Gene Silva. But once it got to the 3rd round, you saw Gene Silva open up a lot more. He had gotten a lot more comfortable. You saw the way he fought change. You saw that he kind of looked a bit more like the old Gene Silva, let his hands go a little bit, really crashed in a lot more. And Arnold Allen kept up with it. He still did his thing. He didn't get overwhelmed. He was clearly losing in those exchanges, but he was still present, which is more than most fighters in those moments against Gene Silva. Gene Silva does have an issue with that lead foot, that lead left leg, I believe, that he's always heavy on. It's always susceptible to leg kicks. I think more fighters should take advantage of that. And he's also fairly small in stature for featherweight as far as height-wise. So pushing the grappling exchange would definitely help in certain aspects, even though he's pretty strong for his size. Saying all that to say this, I think Arnold Allen, it's great to have him back. Hopefully he's here a little bit more consistently within the division. I know I'm one to talk about being consistent, but he's here a little bit more consistently, and he's capable of really pushing more so that we can see the potential of what impact he might make in the overall division. My opinion, Gene Silva is completely capable of being a UFC champion. I believe Volkanovski should beat Diego Lopez again next week. But let's say the unthinkable happens and Lopez actually manages to defeat Volkanovski and Volk retires. It would also give a good storyline for a road back to the championship for Gene Silva. I do think he has some stuff to work on as far as comfortability and otherwise, but I'd like to see how he fits in these matchups against somebody. I think he needs one more. I don't think you can, regardless of who wins next weekend, I don't think you can just say, all right, Gene Silva is the next title opportunity. I think he needs one more against somebody else in the top 5, whoever it is. If he gets that one more, then I'd say put him right in to the title opportunity. But let's see what happens next. The Fighting Nerds is up. Moving on. We have Natalia Silva versus Rose Namajunas. Now, of all the fights tonight, this is the one I'm the most upset with, and it's not full of... I know a lot of people saying the fight was boring and all that stuff. For me personally, I enjoyed it. I know, crazy, but I enjoyed it, personally speaking. But this fight was a robbery. This fight was a blatant robbery as well. I see a lot of people saying, well, nothing really happened, and you couldn't score the rounds properly because this and that. No, like, I intentionally made sure to rewatch the first round specifically in detail of this fight to ensure that it was, that my assumptions was correct. As I say all the time, if you think something's a robbery, before you stick to that point, absolutely double check the facts. When I double check the facts, shit looked funny in the light. Even right here, where you see the total strikes and then you see the significant story. Like, let me even go. Let's go specifically by round one, because I think everyone agrees on rounds 2 and 3. Round 2 went for Rose Namajunas. Round 3 went for Natalia Silva. But when you look at this for round one, they say, oh, it's 15-13. First of all, this doesn't look accurate. They said Natalia, all 15 of of the strikes by Natalia were significant, and all 13 by Rose were significant. What this feels like is people weren't paying attention and they just put bullshit numbers. Honestly. Because when you looked at the actual fight and you looked at that round one, there's no way possible for you to give it to Natalia Silva. Rose Namajunas landed more strikes in that first round. Regardless of what you see, she landed more strikes in the first round. Not only did she land more strikes in the first round, she was the more aggressive one in the first round. She had more pressure. She moved forward more. She landed the bigger strikes. She was landing spinning elbows and is landing more body shots throughout that entire first round. And yet still, when you look at this, they gave it to Natalia Silva, who was quite literally backing up while getting hit for the majority of that round. When it came to the third, and you were looking at the live comments as well as the odds, most people had it 2-0 for Rose Namajunas. She looked like the more skilled fighter throughout those first 2 rounds. And in the third round, Natalia Silva was herself, as well as her corner, made it known that, yo, we are probably behind. That third round was meant to be a finishing round. Silva upped the aggression and the pace that much because she felt as if, yo, it could be a possible do or die situation. Nobody actually believed that Silva won the fight once it was over, except for the judges. And like, it's disappointing because Rose Namajunas, historically, regardless of how you feel about her trainer, I feel like every time you mention Rose, people can't stop talking about her trainer for some reason. But Rose Namajunas, like, on a technical level, is one of the most skilled WMMA fighter, women's MMA fighters of all time. Rose Namajunas has some of the biggest wins ever. She has twice against Weili and Shen Jacob. Like, and Jan Jaroba. My apologies. I don't know. She has twice against, like, Rose is one of the most skilled women's MMA fighters ever. When you look at her capabilities, even since moving up, skill for skill wise, she's better than most. If she had beaten Silva, she would have been the top contender and the next to go against Shevchenko. It would have been a great legacy fight for her. It would have been an excellent matchup. It's really disappointing to see a situation like that where you see somebody's legacy get robbed and stolen. And I don't care what anybody keeps saying about, well, who cares, it was boring. Whether you think it was boring or not doesn't change the fact that somebody's glory got stolen in an opportunity that was earned. We cannot complain that UFC is becoming WWE, but then when it comes to the fights and or fighters that you dislike, now we're going to say, well, it doesn't matter anymore. Now we want it to be WWE because now you just don't care how bad. Once it comes to the UFC, we claim that we want it to be a meritocracy. We either want it to be a meritocracy or we just want it to be the flashiest bullshit that they can put on TV. And the fans need to get their shit together and decide how you want it. Do you want it to be who deserves it the best? Do you want it to be the best fighting the best? Or do you just want to be the most exciting and fun shit? If that's the case, then let the BMF be taken just as seriously as the actual championship belts. And then we can just put all the bullshit together and just compete over the most gimmicky fight organization ever. But that's my take on everything. Moving on, we had Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Derek Lewis. Now, this is another fight that basically went exactly how I expected it to. If anything, I'd probably say the only difference is I more so expected it to end in the first. I didn't think it was going to make it to the second. But it basically looked exactly like I said. The biggest threat that Derek Lewis had against Waldo Cortez Acosta was his overwhelming power and his unpredictability. That's it. Derek Lewis, even taking his age out of the case, doesn't have that good footwork. Has no significant or credible grappling. He also is not good at cutting the ring off. Derek Lewis isn't good as a fighter. Like, as a martial artist, he's not that good. However, he's an incredible brawler. Crazy swings. He's very smart and creative. And because when you combine those two things, and dirty, he's smart, creative, and dirty as hell. And when you combine those three things, it creates a very big unpredictability factor. And even with Cortez Acosta, you saw how some of his shots, he just jump and just wing at him. And Acosta had to just rely on his better and superior skill and physical condition. Lewis was looking slow in there. He's old now. He was slow before, but now it's like you saw so many just big woofing overhands. Like, he's just trying to touch Costa, and he didn't really get anything clean. Landed a few stuff here and there, but you saw it. It's 46-8. He wasn't really able to connect properly because Acosta was getting him with the leg kicks and then was hitting him with that jab and constantly sticking and moving and kept circling out and really lining him up. And Acosta just battered him and kept building bigger and bigger and bigger advantages throughout it. First round, yeah, he got him out the way and managed to he got as far. When I say get him out the way, I said first round he would just overwhelmed him, and he basically just outskilled him. Had Derek Lewis sweating like crazy. When he came to the second round, like, he just got him out. And everyone, I saw that the commentator was saying that Lewis slipped. That's why he felt. Lewis didn't slip. Like, even when you replay the replay, yes, it doesn't look like much, but I don't know if you've ever been hit in your face. But sometimes the shit that don't look that hard hurt the most. What happened was Acosta hit him with that short, quick jab, and Lewis fell backwards. Costa then didn't just completely give Lewis the space to stand up. And as we've already established, Lewis is not fast. Lewis is not a high fight IQ fighter as far as martial skill is considered. Lewis got hit, he fell on his ass, and before he could properly start posturing up, Acosta, unlike when he knocked him down in the first round, came to him and managed to get past his legs and started hitting him with big elbows and just fed him shots on the ground. And it got stopped. That was it. Lewis didn't allow the position to come to him. He literally just couldn't do anything. That's how it goes sometimes. But overall, it was still a pretty fun fight. Moving on, we had the co-main event of Song Yadong versus Sean O'Malley. But moving on, we have the co-main event of Song Yadong versus Sean O'Malley. Now, what can I say? As I said in my predictions, Sean O'Malley and Song Yadong, Sean O'Malley's advantages, a lot of his skills, a lot of the things that make him the good fighter and make him the level of fighter he is, are things that just are a bad pairing against somebody like Song Yadong. Song Yadong is a very aggressive fighter. And don't get me wrong, that gave him a lot of moments against Sean O'Malley. But as O'Malley warmed up and got more comfortable within the fight, it just was way too difficult to land anything clean. Whereas O'Malley was able to counter a lot better, a lot more effectively in this. While you see how close they were on the strikes, and even though Yadong actually managed to land some takedowns against O'Malley, when you look at the actual significant strikes, you see the huge disparity. While Yadong had landed more total strikes, O'Malley landed significantly more significant strikes. And the reason for that is because O'Malley was countering Yadong a lot better. Yadong would take 3 strikes to land one of O'Malley's heavy strikes. And you would see just a difference in efficiency. O'Malley never just sat on the bottom and allowed Yadong to just kind of take control of him completely. Kept moving, kept trying. Obviously, once again, O'Malley isn't no jiu-jitsu specialist. However, it's good enough to get him out of danger for people who aren't good with that heavy top pressure like a Marab. So when you look at this fight, you saw O'Malley get more and more and more warmed up, and he kind of pull away a lot more. Even if you go and we look at it round by round, and you look at the significant strikes, you see the difference in significant strikes. You saw Yadong landed a takedown round 1. You saw round 2, Yadong was able to push that intensity, saw him up it, put 2 more takedowns, got more total strikes, and this time he got the more significant strikes. When you saw that 3rd round come, you see the disparity. O'Malley got a lot more comfortable, warmed up a lot more, had a proper understanding of Yadong's timing, distance, and power threat, and then he just put it on him. More significant strikes, more strikes in total. I promise you, all 25 and all 12 of these weren't significant strikes. However, they show more or less the overall momentum of what was happening, in that O'Malley was countering a lot more. O'Malley was timing a lot better. O'Malley was getting a lot more out of the way. It's also why Yadong didn't get any takedowns, because O'Malley was just a lot more cerebral than him in this matchup. Overall, it was a very fun fight. Absolutely co-main event worthy. But I definitely believe that O'Malley showed his capability with this. And while I believe that probably Umar is the better matchup against Peter Yan, and I'm not going to lie to you, I think that we've been spoon-feeding Sean O'Malley for way too long. However, if I had to choose between Umar and O'Malley based off their performances tonight, I'd go with O'Malley, because O'Malley fought more. And that's what I'm saying. You have to take the opportunities that you're given to show why you're deserving of the next title shot. Moving on, we got the first main event of the new year and of the Paramount era. And boy, oh boy, did it deliver. I have to say, I was very impressed by both fighters for different reasons. I think in my predictions, I believe Paddy Pimblett would have won. I said that overall, he just was the more skilled fighter, to put it simply. And I think he demonstrated that in this fight in a lot of ways, that he was landing cleaner jabs, he was trying to escape, he was picking his positions better. I think skill-wise, he showed that he has a lot of the skills. But that's for the old Gaethje in certain aspects. I will say Gaethje did a little bit of the old and the new with this, because Gaethje very clearly was trying to set a statement with this performance. He was going for the knockout. He really was just trying to kill him in a lot of aspects. He, throughout this fight, constantly was just trying to bash Paddy Pimblett more and more. You saw that some of that cleanness, I said, that how his technical aspect had improved. A lot of this fight, Gaethje cut off the ring. Some of the critiques I had for other fighters on this card of not having that proper ring generalship, Justin Gaethje demonstrated that beautifully throughout this. Constantly pressure Paddy, constantly cutting off the ring, landing the big shots, not just allowing him to recover, forcing him to fight. If Paddy Pimblett was a lesser fighter, he would have been finished by the second. Justin Gaethje went at him, and he was throwing bombs. But this is also the fight that I've seen the most wrestling from Gaethje ever. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the sport and the skill set, may not have been aware, but Justin Gaethje was using a lot of wrestling from the very beginning with this. From when he would grab Paddy Pimblett, headlock him, and back him down to the ground, and then while from a front headlock position, constantly uppercutting and hitting him. That was wrestling he used to pull him to the ground. And even when he was going at Paddy in the later rounds, and you saw it look like Paddy tripped or slipped, but in the reality, when you actually watch the fight and pay more attention, you realize that Paddy and Justin are exchanging. Justin switched to a quick inside knee, pulls Paddy's leg from under him, immediately starts battering him. And even when Paddy tried to take down Gaethje, and you saw Gaethje do a sprawl while maintaining the front headlock and then slip and completely turn his body out, Justin Gaethje was beautifully mixing in wrestling and tempering it to fit his own specific style, which is one of the biggest requests that we as fans have had for him throughout his entire UFC career. So it was great to see that in a fight where the stakes were upped, you saw Gaethje really doing what was necessary. Even look at the difference in strikes, 200 to 170. And even though it was a 5-round fight, both of these fighters were really putting it out here. You saw Gaethje batter Pimblett's face more and more. Despite that, in the first round, you see the difference with the strikes. 40 versus 38 when it came to total strikes. But when it came to the significant strikes, it's 27 versus 37. You saw, and this is what I was saying, that I think Paddy Pimblett was actually the one who was showing more skill, because in the initial fight, in the initial round, my apologies, you saw Pimblett was landing the sharper jab, landing the cleaner blows. Pimblett was being more aware of the situation. And then Gaethje connected, and he fell. And it was really that. Gaethje was very aware of who he was. And Pimblett was forced to be aware of who Gaethje was. And because of that, it was no longer, okay, then I'm going to just outskill him and hit him more. It was no longer about hitting him more. It was now getting hit less, because Gaethje was connecting with bombs, and he was really knocking down, and he was going for punches and uppercuts and elbows. Gaethje was battering him from pillar to post. I thought Paddy was going to get knocked out by the fourth round by the pace of how the fight was going. And Paddy Pimblett dug deep, hard on him. You have to give Paddy credit for heart. Like, he really lived up to that saying when he always says that Scotsers don't get knocked out. I'm like, that really looked to be true, because Paddy was taking some blows in that fight. Overall, though, I think he'll be back. I think Paddy will be back. He'll take some time, heal up, rebuild, come back in against another opponent, maybe a Max Holloway, depending on who wins between Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira. Now, let's assume that Justin Gaethje actually fights Ilia Topuria later this year. Who do I think wins that? I think it's Ilia. To be blunt, I think one of the reasons why this strategy with Justin Gaethje was so effective is because of his incredible durability versus the level of power Paddy was able to put out during that type of chaotic, frantic pace of a fight. I don't see that working the same way for an Ilia Topuria. I think Ilia has way too much dynamite in his hands for that type of strategy to work even close to as effectively. We saw when Charles Oliveira kind of tried to adopt a similar strategy, how that ended. And you saw it with Ilya Topuria, who is a bit more wrestler heavy. Yeah, jiu-jitsu as well, but Ilya Topuria also has good wrestling defense. So some of those trips and slips that Justin Gaethje was mixing in may not be as effective for somebody who's shorter and heavier with a better base. And just overall, Gaethje getting hit that much as he did against Paddy would probably put him out a lot faster. So, and we know Gaethje is capable of being knocked out because we've seen Oliveira do it before, and we know Ilya hits harder than Oliveira. So, I'd be a little bit hesitant, especially for a 5-round fight of that type of pace. I think Ilya Topuria gets Gaethje out of there. I don't really see that being very competitive. Against Armin Sarukian now, let's say that Ilya Topuria doesn't come this year, and let's say the belt gets vacated, and we see Armin Sarukian fight Justin Gaethje for that vacant title. I think that's where Justin Gaethje has more of an opportunity. I still think Armin Sarukian is better skilled, but I think Justin Gaethje's strategy and power would be a lot bigger of a factor then. I think Armin Sarukian doesn't have nowhere near the power to present that same level of threat to Justin Gaethje. He still can knock him out, as we've seen him done before, and especially with his leg kicks. And I think he would have the superior grappling strategy in these moments. I just don't think it would be to that level where Gaethje would need to be overly conscious of it. Well, to say this though, right now, we've seen Gaethje win the interim belt twice now. Are we going to see him actually win the championship belt? As I've said before, his career has been very, very similar to Dustin Poirier's in a lot of moments. So let's see if this is where he draws a differentiation for his third title opportunity. Will he finally get it done? Well, that's it for my recap, reaction, and breakdown, guys. Let me know what y'all think. What y'all think about the event. Did y'all enjoy it? Like and subscribe and share. Until next time, peace.